What's up, Djenters? Do you like djent? Well, if you do, I'm back again with another djent lesson for you today. This is Djent 5.0, where I'm going to be covering rhythmic displacement, polyrhythms, and syncopation. The kind of stuff that Meshuggah, Animals as Leaders, and Periphery does to make their music sound really cool and unique. Stick around, you're not going to want to miss this. Alright guys, congratulations, you've made it to Djent 5.0. You've ascended to the next level. So for those of you who have not seen Djent 2.0, I would highly recommend you check that video out. It was very popular, a lot of you guys enjoyed watching that, but I cover a lot of the general picking technique stuff that is found in just metal music in general, but in this video we're going to cover more of the rhythmic devices that are used by some of the band members of Meshuggah, Periphery, Animals as Leaders, Dream Theater, and beyond. So by the end of this video, you'll be able to understand the difference between rhythmic displacement, polyrhythms, and syncopation, and you'll be on your way to writing some sick djent riffs. Before I start explaining all of this stuff to you guys, I wanted to just go over really quick some of the tools that I'm going to be using in this video. The first one is my iPad, which is running this app called Drum Genius, okay? And it's going to be coming out of my Bluetooth speaker over here, which is actually my amp, my Yamaha THR. I highly recommend this amp. I've got dozens of videos about how great this amp is if you guys want to check that out, but that's what I'm going to be using for some of the preliminary examples. For all of the pre-recorded examples that I've prepared for you guys, the guitar tone that you're going to be hearing is the Licht Larum Audio Gehenna pedal. And I have a demo of this pedal if you want to check that out as well. All of the djent sounds are going through this thing and coming out of my Mesa Boogie JP2C. Another thing that we're going to use is a Tama rhythm watch, a metronome. Any metronome that you may have, even a metronome app on your phone is fine, but I've got this super duper crazy metronome that I'm going to be using to demonstrate a few things later on in the video. Also in this video, I'm going to be using the X-Vive U2 wireless system to plug in my guitar to the Yamaha THR. You'll see these the whole time while we're talking about this. These are great, they're cheap, they're awesome. And last but not least, I'm going to be using my trusty Kiesel Vader VM8 8-string guitar. If you don't have an 8-string guitar, that's okay, but you're just probably not as cool as people that have 8-string guitars. Come on now, I'm totally kidding. All of these concepts you can apply on a 6-string guitar or even a 5-string guitar for that matter. So let's get on with it. Alright guys, so the first rhythmic device that we're going to talk about that shows up in djent music is rhythmic displacement. To me, it's probably the easiest one to talk about. All it is when you take a rhythmic pattern or a musical phrase and you shift it over by a beat or 2 beats or half of a beat. For example, instead of starting a riff right on beat 1, you could move that riff over a half of a beat and start it on the and of 1. Or you could start it on beat 2 if you wanted to, or you could start it on a different 16th note. So it's pretty straightforward. You're just taking your idea and you're moving it to a different place in the measure. This kind of thing is really obvious and easy to hear in songs like Beautiful Day by U2, or Led Zeppelin's Rock and Roll, or Misty Mountain Hop. A more modern example would be Meshuggah's Broken Cog, where the song starts with a certain rhythm and drum pattern, but then that evolves and changes. The riff is actually felt and perceived in a different way later on in the intro of the song. Before djent and metal, for that matter, even existed, rhythmic displacement was highly used by jazz improvisers. As you can imagine, their solos could be really boring if every solo started on beat 1 and every phrase of every solo started on the downbeat. Inevitably, jazz musicians play their solos on a multitude of different beats, and they're able to perceive and command time in a way that is quite interesting. So let me first start off by demonstrating this with a little bit of jazz, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of counting so you can hear where I'm starting my phrase. So it's going to sound a little something like this. 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Go 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Well, there you go. A metal musician plays jazz. Pretty cool, right? Hopefully by listening to that, you were able to hear how I could start my musical phrase on different parts of the beat. In the next example, you're going to hear a really cool djent riff that starts on beat 1 on the downbeat, and you'll be able to kind of understand how that riff sounds and feels. And then in the following example, I'm going to move it over by a half beat, by 1/8 note basically, and you're going to hear how the entire riff changes. The drummer's hands are going to be doing exactly the same thing, but that kick pattern is going to be moved over by 1/8 note. So here's what that sounds like right now. So that's what a riff sounds like when you move it over by 1/8 note, but let's listen to what this next riff sounds like when we move it over an entire beat and a half. So the first time you hear this riff, it's going to start right on beat 1. The second time you hear it, it's going to start on the and of beat 2, and you can hear how the entire thing is shifted over and it sounds totally different. Okay, so that concludes my explanation of rhythmic displacement. It's a very deep topic that you can take to extreme levels, especially if you start introducing odd time signatures and polyrhythms into your rhythmic displacement. But what I would suggest that you do is just program an interesting sounding beat that starts on beat 1 and then move it over an eighth note, move it over a quarter note, move it over even further, and listen to how your music can evolve and change and sound more interesting and add another layer of depth to what it is that you're doing. Let's move on to the next example. Next, what we're going to be talking about is polyrhythms. Okay, polyrhythms. So the term literally means playing multiple rhythms simultaneously. Sounds pretty simple, right? Well, you're wrong. It's a little bit more complicated than that. Just because you can play eighth notes on the hi-hat and you can kick the kick drum on 1 and 3 and you can play the snare drum on 2 and 4 does not make you as good at drums as Thomas Hake. It's a little bit more complicated than that, and in general, in the djent genre, drummers are the ones that really have to deal with this the most, where they're playing a complex rhythm with their feet that may involve a lot of triplets and strange rhythms, but then their hands are keeping a 4/4 groove. This is something that the guys in Meshuggah have taken to an insane level, and it's quite impressive what they are able to do with this. I feel like polyrhythms probably originated in Africa with African drumming, where you have a tribe that is maybe partaking in some type of ritual, and different members of the drum circle are playing different rhythms that sort of blend together in a symbiotic kind of way and create amazing music where people can do all kinds of stuff too, as you can imagine. Guitar players, however, I think we have it a lot easier with polyrhythms in a band setting because we're simply just playing a linear rhythm. Now that could be a difficult rhythm with strange syncopation and note groupings, but in general, I feel like drummers are the ones that kind of get the short end of the stick when it comes to polyrhythms. So I think it's best to think about polyrhythms in terms of ratios. For example, playing 2 against 3 or playing 3 against 4. So let me demonstrate what that means with my trusty Tama rhythm watch here. So what I have is an eighth note click, and what I'm going to do first is play a triplet against that, and I would recommend learning how to count. So what I'm going to start with is a eighth note click sound at 90 beats per minute, and I'm going to play triplets on my guitar over the top of that, and you can hear how the rhythm I'm playing goes against the rhythm from the metronome. It sounds a little something like this. Here's how you would count this rhythm. Triplet, 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 triplet. And as you can hear right there, I added an extra 16th note to change things up a little bit. So what I'm going to do next is play note groupings of 5. You can count 5s a few different ways. You can just count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or you could count 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Check it out. I'm going to play 5s against this pattern here. The end result of using polyrhythms should be some type of exciting, jarring, mind-melting, rhythmical thing that comes together and grooves. The groove is the most important thing. So I would highly recommend experimenting with playing 3 against 4 and then playing 5 against 8, playing groups of 7 if you can in a variety of different ways, and I'll probably demonstrate that in some other videos. In the following example, I'm actually going to be playing a drum set, which I have in the room right next to this one, and I'm going to be playing some broken 16th note patterns with my foot, and you're going to hear how they line up in different strange ways with my hands playing a simple 4/4 beat. I'm going to start off with groups of 2, then 3, and then 4, and you can hear how things can get really interesting and wacky pretty quick. All right, and the last rhythmic element I'm going to discuss in this video is syncopation, which really just means that you accent any other beat in the measure except for the strong beat. So in a measure of 4/4 time, for example, the strong beat would be 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if you accent the E of 1 or the Ah of 2, right? 1 E and a 2 E and a 3, like that whole thing, 16th notes, you would be using syncopation in your music. The strong beats in a measure of 3/4 would probably be just beat 1. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So if you accented any of the upbeats at all in a measure of 3/4, you would be using syncopation in your music. So in djent music, this is taken to the extreme due to the sophistication of what we do in the genre. Once again, I'm going to be using an eighth note click at 90 beats per minute, and I'm going to be accenting all kinds of different beats, and it's going to sound a little something like this. Sounds pretty cool, right? And I'm sure you guys have already been using syncopation in some of your own compositions and music out there. But like I said, in djent, we take this to extremes. I wanted to give you guys one more rhythmic device to mess around with, and it's really common in djent music. And if you've heard the song Bleed by Meshuggah, you definitely know what I'm talking about. It's the Herta. And really what a Herta is when you add an extra 16th note to the first of the 3 notes in a triplet. A normal triplet would sound like this. Now if I add an extra 16th note, it would sound like this. Let me just show you how to play that slow. So it's actually 5 notes, and I'm going to be playing down, up, down, up, down. And I think you might notice that it kind of sounds like your stepdad's Harley Davidson as it's idling. Okay guys, in this final example that you're gonna hear, I've loaded it up with Hertas, syncopation, polyrhythms, rhythmic displacement. This last example is nuts. Just see if you can spot all of the different rhythmic elements within this example. Another thing I wanted to add is that usually when djent musicians record their music, they record it in sections, and I do that too. So it could be like an 8-bar or a 4-bar phrase that I'm going to punch in and record, and then I'm gonna string all of that stuff together and create this really insane piece of progressive metal music, okay? That's really common to do with the advent of computer recording technology. Now, the real challenge comes when you have to perform this stuff live and learn all of these crazy rhythmic patterns and play them in one performance, okay? That's the art of metal, right? And if you've ever seen Meshuggah, what they do is quite impressive on stage. They're able to play decades and decades of material that they've written and perform it perfectly on stage with a light show and with amazing sound and all of that stuff. So think about that the next time you see your favorite metal band. If they're doing cool stuff, show a little bit of appreciation for the art of metal. Guys, thank you so much for checking out Djent 5.0. I've been wanting to make this video for a while. It's been a little over a year since the last one came out. Thank you for sticking around and watching this. Hopefully you learned something new. If you found anything in this video to be valuable, if you learned something, please like this video, leave a comment, subscribe to this channel. I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to do this full time. The more that you share this video and tell your friends about what's going on at my channel, the more it helps me and allows me to make more exciting and interesting content like this video here. Thank you so much for watching and have a fantastic day wherever you're at. Bye-bye.